Hi, Joel Rollins here for Rave Radio on day 2 of InfoComm 2015, and I'm here with Jeff Hastings of Brightsign. Jeff, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Joel. Good to see you again.
Last year, you and I were looking at your first 4K players. What's happened since then?
Well, a lot of things have happened in the year since we introduced them. A lot of it has just been about the technology, how we're moving forward the technology. We brought out the initial 4K stuff, and now what we're doing is really showing off the real specifics of the technology in the player. The first one is the new H.265 codec, the ability to really reduce the bandwidth that's required. Got some demos here to show basically how you can look at 265 versus 264. It's about a 50% savings. I mean, that's kind of the least case. A lot of times you can get up to 70%. We're showing 10-bit color. 10-bit color, most people think, what does 10-bit color give me? But a lot of times you'll see banding on the screen when you're watching commercial television. That's 8-bit color. You go to 10-bit, it all looks smooth. And the last one is really showing people the difference between 60 frames a second and 30 frames a second. Our players support 60 frames a second, HDMI 2.0. Most people are shocked when they look at 30 frames a second, like, wow, I didn't realize it was that jittery.
This picture looks virtually 3D. It is that tight. So this is, what are we looking at here?
So this is 4K video, and then right in the background, we've got HTML saying on top of it, and what I can do is actually go through these and show you the different things. So the first one is up here, the H.264 versus H.265. I click on this button, and what it's showing is two 1080p videos on our 4K screen, each one of them encoded at 750 kilobits. So 750 kilobits with H.264, 750 kilobits with 265. The 264, as you can see, looks all blocky and mottled. This one looks pretty darn good at 750 kilobits for 1080p. So that's kind of the same compression rate. If you then move to 10 megabits, which is kind of the standard for a really good H.264, here it is at 5 megabits, so half the file size, and this even looks better. You can tell that the 5 megabits, so literally you can have half the file size with 265, and you get this gorgeous color going up to 10 bits, 60 frames a second.
In the 264, we're seeing what I would think of as quantization blocking,
exactly.
Right? And it's very common to 264, which I use in video conferencing and playback quite a lot.
Yep. This
is actually encoded at a lower rate, but looks cleaner?
Exactly. And so what happens with going from H.264 to H.265, basically the algorithm for motion estimation, which is where you get the blockiness, there's only 9 different directions that you get with H.264. So you think of a clock, you only have 9 places on the dial. With H.265, you get 35 different places. So it's a much finer resolution. So when you see the block differences, it's basically the motion estimation being off. Now you have 35 different places, so you don't see those blocking artifacts, because our eyes really pick up hard lines. You don't get those hard lines with H.265.
And on top of that, being a high-efficiency codec, 265 then allows us to maintain that picture, but at lower bandwidth.
Exactly. So dramatically lower bandwidth, or when you go up to 4K, you can now have 4K image quality at the same file size basically as 1080p. So it 4K doesn't require any new infrastructure. Same file sizes, same bandwidth.
How's 4K doing in the signage market?
4K is taking off in the signage market. The biggest thing that's taking off, that's actually kind of prevailing it, is a lot of the display manufacturers are just now coming out with their 4K displays. They put a lot of effort into the consumer market, and you see the consumer displays are all 4K everywhere. On the commercial side, they're slowly coming out. That's really holding it back. I think you'll see later this year it really taking off, and into next year you'll see things absolutely just spec'd at 4K. Going forward in 2016, it's just going to be 4K and above.
For those of us that install digital signage, what digital signage vertical markets are adopting 4K the fastest?
So the ones that are investing in 4K the fastest are the ones that really have the longest lifespan. We're seeing a lot of stadiums, building new stadiums. They're putting 4K in right now because they know this is a long lifespan play. We're seeing retail put it in, where luxury retail, where the image quality is just so important to them, where they've traditionally been print, they're starting to use 4K. So it's starting to move in, and then what's going to happen, just like it went from 720p to 1080, you're just going to only be buying 4K pretty soon. And that's probably going to happen in 2016. You're going to see that cutover start to happen.
Now, I was talking to Ann a little bit earlier. One of the things I've really been fascinated by with Brightsign is the number of sources that your players can deal with. I mean, we all think of H.265 MPEG playback. That's great. But you seem to be able to incorporate a lot of other things.
Yeah, our players basically handle pretty much any type of media. Now, even HTML5, really sophisticated HTML5. We're introducing a new software release at the show called 6.0 firmware that has a whole new rendering engine allowing you to do WebGL. So WebGL is basically 3D graphics, real-time 3D graphics based on HTML. So you can actually do that with our new firmware release starting later this fall. And it's basically kind of revolutionizes the amount of content we can ingest. So pretty much anything you can imagine our players take in the audio video world.
Touchscreen capable?
Touchscreen capable. You can integrate with Crestron systems and AMX and UDP control, all types of control systems. Pretty much anything you want to do is all built into our players and comes standard with our software.
One of the things that's really impressed me that you've just been talking about is we think of your players as hardware, but you seem to update a lot of things in firmware.
Yeah. Really at the core of what we do is hardware, but our real value add is the software stack. We have a massive software stack, and we're constantly adding more and more new features and capabilities to our software platform. And the nice thing, it's all backwards compatible. Every time you use our player, you can go get a new firmware update, and we allow all these new features to flow to the product.
So 1 year ago, we were talking about the first adoption of 4K, and now your firmware updates have included 4K and HTML5.
And exactly. And, the volume, the last time I checked, we're around 25,000 units since we actually started selling in October. So a lot of people thought, 4K, no one's buying it. We're into over 20,000 units already sold.
Okay, and if people want to actually see this in action, and it's a great booth, what's your booth number?
What's our booth number? It's 5151. I'm losing my mind. So 5151 here at InfoComm. But there's a lot of stuff on the web, www.brightsign.biz, or just type Brightsign into Google, and Google will bring you right to our site.
Great. Folks, stop by 5151 because this 265 picture is really amazing. Jeff, thanks for being with us.
Thanks a lot, Joel. Thank you.